Pickaxe.
Welcome to the Chance Encounters podcast. We've been running board game cafes around the UK for the past 7 years now. From hen-dos to family reunions, first dates to breakups, we've recommended the perfect game for every situation, and now we want a fresh challenge. Every episode we'll be inviting a guest on to put our board game knowledge to the test. They'll come armed with an abstract and absurd scenario, and it's up to us to figure out what that situation calls for and recommend a game that totally sharpens their pun game. Whoever's recommendation our guest loves the most will score a point, and at the end of the series, one person will be crowned the Titan of Board Games.
Da, da, da.
Oh, thank you. I'm one of your hosts, Richard Scarsbrook. I founded Chance Encounters, and I believed that when I was 3, I could read in French. I subsequently forgot. But I don't know. Asterix and Obelix was no problem for me. I'm joined by my co.
I was just saying, was that because you read a book in English that's set in France and just assumed you could read French?
No, I apparently I have this really clear memory that I was just sitting on the sofa reading a French version of Asterix and Obelix, and I was like, yeah, I read this. And then my parents were like, that's in French. And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. I totally understood what was going on. And I don't know. And then I was just like, I just forgot how to do French. And I was like, okay.
Sure.
Maybe we should invite your child prodigy.
Yeah.
Maybe I was.
You know?
Maybe we should invite your parents onto the podcast next.
So they can tell you how I read a book in French.
Just question your childhood a bit.
I've probably forgotten a lot of it based on the fact that I also forgot an entire language. So I am joined by my other host, Ben.
Hi, I'm Ben. I record videos with the Yogscast. I'm a massive nerd and I love board games. I have 0 language abilities, but I could tell you over 1,000 different registry numbers for Battletech mechs, which I feel like is essentially a different language, but far less useful.
It's a real niche, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very technical language.
We, of course, joined by Game Guru Russ.
Hello, I'm Russell. I work for Chance Encounters under various titles, but I'm currently very concerned about the box design of certain games. Because I don't know if you know this, but Obama Llama and Tranquility both come in this really weird box that when you pick it up off the shelf, the bottom slips out and causes cards to fall out everywhere. So currently getting very frustrated at that particular kind of design. That's currently my worry at the cafe. But
I wasn't worried about that at all till you mentioned it. And
yeah,
now it's all I can think about.
It's the only way to pick it up because you pick it up in one hand, which I guess is the difference between games other boxes where you just pick them up with 2 hands, or you've got that sort of like ability to pick it up like a, and hold the lid and the case and the box base together. But for some reason these games just don't. You pick it up and it just falls out everywhere, and it's very frustrating. So yeah, good games, just bad box design.
It's quite bad whenever you're out in the public and your bottom falls out.
Never a good look.
No. We are joined by our guests. We have 2, Efka and Elaine from No Pun Included.
Hello.
Hello,
Hi.
I'm Elaine. This is Efka.
Thank you so
We are
much
from
for
No Pun
joining us.
Included.
It's what it says so on the tin. Yeah, no, thank you. So you guys do amazing work with the board game community, doing loads of reviews and various other bits as well. So thank you so much for taking the time out and joining us.
Thank you for having us. It's actually not entirely implausible that you were reading in French at 3 years old. Some layman's linguistics knowledge. I did like a course in linguistics in uni, and we did language acquisition. And actually, children have an amazing capacity to just absorb foreign languages because to them it's all just language. So they're you're learning effectively at the same time as you're learning to speak or read in English. You're doing the same with any language. So
Yeah, but only if you're exposed to it.
Yeah, but if you exposed yourself by reading a comic book, something as a child you actively want to do, you would be able to do it.
What?
Wow.
I know.
And then you just let it rot and it atrophied away.
Exactly.
You've gained and lost a skill.
If only I had read more Asterix and Obelix over the years in French.
There you go.
That's fascinating. I think that I really wish, it's my biggest regret as like a kid, is not learning another language, especially living in Wales where there is another language, Welsh, and just feeling that would have been so useful to me nowadays. And so, yeah, I've always regretted not having learned a language, because it's so easy, as you said, when you're a kid, because it's just like just another thing that you're learning. But that's really fascinating.
It is actually, in fact, too late for you now. Because and I don't know how outdated this information is, because this was like mid-noughties, early noughties that I learned this. But apparently, like, your brain's ability to acquire languages shuts down like almost entirely by the time you're 12 years old. However, up until you are 12, you can, just by exposure, learn up to 20 languages and differentiate between them.
Wow.
Really?
I know.
I mean, kind of impressed by that also. Like, I just imagine getting those languages mixed up all the time would be sort of common, you know?
Oh, that's typical, isn't it? Because you don't start learning a language in British schools until about 13 years old. They've timed that perfectly. Let's just make it as hard as humanly possible.
Oh my guys. I think they haven't. I mean, not that we need to go into the schooling system of the UK, I suppose. I was just going off on another tangent.
Exciting, right?
Yeah.
I know that currently there's people campaigning to have British Sign Language taught as a GCSE, because currently there's like French, Spanish, German, whatever, right? But there's nothing. There's no choice. So British Sign Language would be a lot more useful, I think, to a lot of people than French, German, or Spanish.
It's a good idea.
Isn't it?
My little... so I recently became a father, and...
Congratulations.
Thank you. There's an activity you can go to which is called Sing and Sign, and I'm not 100% sure if the sign language that it's associated with is just for babies, or whether or not it's associated...
Is it Makaton?
Sorry?
Is it Makaton? Sing and Sign, is it Makaton? Like Mr. Tumble and his spotty bag.
My wife takes him to her and teaches me the sign language afterwards. But it's fascinating because the whole idea is that like the babies can just sign before they can actually speak and stuff, so that you can have a lot more communication, which I think is incredible. And yeah, I totally would support sign language in schools.
Well, ever since I've seen dogs on TikTok talking using these buttons, like nothing surprises me anymore.
They are fascinating.
These are great. Oh gosh, we are really down a language rabbit hole. Should we pull ourselves out of this? And then go, welcome to the board game podcast section of this. I'm so glad you're here. Should we go into the absurd scenario, or the scenario that you guys have prepared?
Shall we?
Yes, let's.
Okay, so here's the pitch. You are on a tree, right? You're on a tree branch, and below you is a bear. Now, you've met this bear, so you know a couple of facts about it. You know that it's hungry and that it wants to eat you, right? However, this bear is also asleep, right? Now, for unspecified reasons also, you must play a board game to completion, right? However, if a piece falls down, it will wake up the bear, who then will climb the tree and eat you.
Wow. Okay.
What board game will you play?
Ooh. Are we talking I'm in the tree on my own? Is it that several of us up this tree?
I mean,
there could be more than one of you.
There could be more than one. It's up to you, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is sound a factor? Like if it's a noisy game, if we're communicating, if we're rolling dice, is that going to wake up the bear, or is he only woken up by dropping things on him?
Just if things fall down on
I
him.
think if you're very, very loud, if it's some kind of game which I can't think of that would have screaming in it, then that would probably wake the bear up. But as long as it's like normal talking level, that's okay.
That's like any game where I lose through an unfair move is screaming involved.
So is this a power move by the bear? Why is the bear currently sleeping and just like dragging out our inevitable death?
The bear's like, I can do this later.
I think what has happened, actually, sorry to butt in, I think what has happened is that you're having a nice time, you've decided to climb a tree because, climbing trees is fun, but then the bear has toodled up to the tree and decided to take a nap.
Which you've met previously.
The bear was previously chasing you, I guess. I don't know, that's how you know it's hungry. But you've climbed this tree. at your leisure, not running away from the bear, and the bear has decided to take a nap under the tree separately.
Yeah.
And now you have to not wake the bear up.
So the bear does know we're there, or will only know that we're there when we drop a piece on them?
Correct.
Right. Okay. So we now need to play said board game for an ineffable reason.
To
I'm sure
completion.
it's obvious, blatantly obvious. We don't even need to get into it. Like, I'm sure we all understand why the board game's important. Let's just move on.
And in terms of the success, we just need to finish a board game.
Correct.
And then maybe the bear just wanders on?
Yeah, exactly. That's what will happen.
He'll have had his nap and he'll have wandered off,
Okay. Do we know how long roughly the bear will be sleeping for? Like, are we going to be playing a game? That's up to us as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
The bear will sleep the length of the board game,
Yes.
which must be at least 10 minutes. Like let's say
Okay.
10 minutes, you know.
Right.
We're not just going to do one round of rock, paper, scissors and get out of there.
Yeah.
It is a magical bear.
Does so we're up on this tree. Now, what's our playing? Is that our playing surface just the branch of this tree?
Correct.
Like, is that something we've got to factor in? Oh gosh, okay.
Or maybe like one of when a tree does this and splits.
Yeah.
There could be a
Yeah. There could be
playing
like
the crook.
an adjacent branch.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes. It's not like a single skinny branch that you've all got to balance on and play a game on.
And we can't cheat and be like, oh, this house that I previously had climbed it also has a tree house in there that is set up for board games. No.
And I guess the other thing is how strong is this tree? Because obviously it's enough to accommodate us. So I guess and there's not going to be many board games that will accommodate us. That will be too heavy to be like accommodating the two people and this board game. It's hardly going to factor in, right?
I don't think so.
also-
Yeah, it's the balancing that's the issue, I think.
It can also accommodate the bear, right?
Yeah.
The bear could climb the tree.
So can a board game,
So
yeah.
could a board. Yeah, the board game will be fine.
Because I know you play a lot of bigger board games.
Not in trees though.
No,
Not yet.
and I guess it's not about pleasing you personally, right? It's about you're gonna pick the best
Survivor.
yeah, who can last the longest. Yeah, okay. I'm thinking obviously games. I'm thinking games that are like self-contained are great for this because, the less kind of risk you have of moving pieces outside would be great. But there's not actually that many games I can think of off the top of my head that are all self-contained.
Yeah, I mean, it's a game you can play without a table. Is it even a board game?
Do we need a definition of a board game here?
Well, that's what I'm wondering, because we could play, 20 questions as a game to pass the time, wouldn't drop any pieces, wouldn't need a table.
With yourself.
But, well, I'm assuming there's other people stuck up this tree with me.
Sure.
There's
So
also
you've decided to drag more people into this perilous situation just so that you have someone else to bounce off.
Of course, I'm not dying on my own. And if I die, I need it to be someone else's fault. I'm not going to be. It can't be all on me.
Also, how awful would you feel if you're the one that drops the piece? Like that would just you basically murdered us all. Also, is there any of that famous saying about you don't have to beat
don't have to
the
outrun the
bear.
bear.
You just
Just
have to be the
outrun your
fastest
friend.
person. You have to beat the slowest player.
Yes.
I am bringing my slowest friends with me up this tree.
People with
I think
was also gonna say-
the bear will know who dropped the piece. If someone drops a piece, the
that's
bear
on
will
them.
know who.
Okay.
Oh, I like that.
so
It
maybe
is a
Okay,
magic
Jenga
bear.
it is. High stakes Jenga.
Wow.
there's actually a game called Dread, isn't there, which uses
is.
the Jenga
Yes.
tower as a sort of a mechanism in the game where
Yeah,
you
it's
remove
like-
the piece, and if it falls, something bad happens, and in this case, something bad will actually happen.
Yeah, it's like a role-playing game without dice. And so whenever you want to complete a challenge in it, you pull a Jenga piece out. So the game starts off very easy, but as it goes on, the creeping dread increases as every task you perform gets harder and harder. Like a
There's
horror
actually,
movie.
there's most role-playing games that use Jenga. There's a solo role-playing game called The Wretched, that simulates you being hunted by an alien on a spaceship, and you're alone on the spaceship, and you must escape. And that you also uses a Jenga tower.
Wow. Did
That's
not
cool.
know about
Nice.
that.
That sounds cool.
I just feel like every ending is, and then they were eaten by the bear.
I like how the only like stipulation was don't drop a piece, and the first game you went to was Jenga, where you literally drop a piece all the time.
Definition. You can't finish the game without dropping
Right.
a piece.
Ben's like, I'm going to find a way of killing my nemesis. This is going to be the game of Jenga.
Yeah, this is how my Sherlock Holmes fan fiction ends, with Holmes and Moriarty stuck up a tree playing the Jenga for their lives.
Yes.
I mean, that's pretty good. I'd read that.
You would?
Yeah, why not?
What kind of tree would it be? Birch.
Some sort of metaphorical tree, I
Okay.
would say. Yeah. You know, where the tree is a symbol for...
Family tree. Right.
Because it's all about family.
Okay.
Perfect.
Like it.
So yeah, do we need to lay some ground rules about what counts as a board game?
I think if we
Like,
go
do
down
we-
that rabbit hole, we might enter a
It
territory
has to-
from which we cannot come back out.
Presumably it
There's
needs to
been many
contain
arguments, but it's in line.
pieces or things. Like
But yeah, I don't mean like
card.
board games. Let's not decide it for all time, but for the purpose of this scenario.
Oh, okay.
Does
Yeah.
there have to be a component, or can we recommend like games that happen entirely in your mind?
Can I stipulate that it has to be a purchasable board game? Like, if it's something you can buy, that counts.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that's
Okay.
sensible.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good rule.
Do you wish to know what season it is?
Yeah, is it
As to
Right.
whether
Oh, man.
right? Whether there's like leaves that you can prop things up against, or whether the wind perhaps might pick up and knock things off.
Yeah, when did
Yeah.
we decide to climb this tree?
Should we say
Hot summer.
Hot
Yeah.
summer.
Hot summer.
and presumably sweat isn't one of those things we have to worry about dropping onto
No,
the bear, right?
sweat's fine. But sweat dropping on a component and then knocking it precariously off balance, which then
yeah.
falls down.
Like a Mission Impossible
Yeah.
style moment of tension.
Yeah. That famous pop culture scene. Yeah, no, man, okay. I've got some thoughts, but I kind of just want to know more about how we met this bear.
Does the bear have
I
a
love
name?
that we already know the bear. That's my favorite part of this.
Also,
Yeah.
that the only two things we know about it are that it's hungry and it wants to eat us. And in which case, how did we find those things out about this bear and not already be eaten?
It's
I think. Sorry.
it was already like, imagine like a televised show where, you know, each episode you run into the same bear and different hijinks ensue, and all you're trying to do is to survive.
Like Yogi Bear.
Yeah, but
From the ranger side.
yeah.
Nice. I was worried that this wasn't the first nemesis I'd invited up a tree.
Oh,
Yours
wow.
is much nicer.
this got dark.
Yeah. Ben is
I
stone
think-
cold.
I think you've probably seen the bear
Taking this
like,
to all the wrong places.
rifling through the trash, and suddenly the bear sees you, does the surprised hamster face, and locks onto you. Yeah, like this. Perfect. Locks onto you, and then so you realise he's hungry.
Yeah. Instantly, you can read that bear's expression. He's just like, "Ugh."
Yes.
That was not as the hungry face. I'm sorry. I'll have
That
to
was a
get better at
poorly
my.
face, but
That was what?
poorly. Like he didn't look very well.
Was no. Maybe he was rubbing his tummy a little bit, just trying to make
Yeah.
it really
Hang his
obvious.
head.
Yeah. I love how all of this information is really relevant towards choosing a board game.
It is.
It's
It
like
is.
super important.
Talking of board games, then, because I'm guessing, even though you know you aren't the ones up the tree, it'll be us. But I'm guessing we need to kind of play into what kind of games you enjoy a little bit. So, do you have any game loves or gaming like turnoffs? Like, no, would never ever go near a game like that.
We're pretty much omni gamers.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that puts me off in a game is where there is take that as a central mechanism where everything kind of revolves around that, or if there is something like a player elimination, and then it's a very long game. So you end up with someone sitting out for half an hour, whatever.
You don't like the big no-nos, right?
Yeah, sure. It's very basic what I don't like.
I think that's true though, because a lot of player elimination, I feel like player elimination was a bigger thing back in the day, in the early days of board games, but I feel like it's kind of like taboo to do that in a game now. And if you do see that, I generally find it's from games from like smaller publishers that have obviously maybe just stepped into it, because I can't recall any game that has been from a known reputable publisher that has player elimination. Certainly not for the last few years.
I realise this bear scenario has a certain amount of player elimination. I just realised that as I said it.
I see what you did there.
You can say what.
No, I wasn't going to say anything.
No,
because
you about like what games. You'd
what
choose,
games I don't like.
What you don't like.
I guess I just don't like really overwrought designs where like every idea was fine that we had when we made this game, and no idea was bad, and so we put everything in there, and just everything exists now, without rhyme or reason, which is a very kind of abstract, I guess, dislike, but it's becoming more and more of a trend. So I think that's, I don't know, relevant maybe.
No, that's fair. I find a lot of Kickstarters that I've played in the last year or so have been a bit kitchen sinky. Like, clearly they've had a million ideas, and then they've put them all up on the Kickstarter, and people have read the ones that they like.
Yep.
And everyone likes a different thing, so now they feel like, oh, well, we've got to have a bit of everything. And then it ends up, not all coming together as succinctly as as maybe, something from a more well-known publisher or designer who's just pruned it down to an elegant form.
Do you think that is sometimes because of the fact that they've kind of already sold the game, so there's not so much of an incentive to make a game that's appealing to people who will see it on the shelf where it stands out amongst other games?
Yeah.
Because essentially Kickstarter is just like a shiny sales advert for a game. You don't have to prove that it works. You just have to entice people enough
just has to look
about
good,
that
right?
game. And then afterwards, when you've got people's money for it, you don't have to worry too much because they've kind of already bought the game.
Well, I mean, I think that's a cynical way of looking at it, but not necessarily entirely untrue. I think there is an element of Kickstarter as a sales platform that basically locks you into everything you've promised. Because as soon as you remove something, you'll have a lot of people saying, but you said that would be in there, right? You sold me on this idea because I thought this would be in the game. And so because it's no longer there, you have suddenly a lot of angry customers. And that happens a lot and more lately, actually, because it's become that whatever you put on the campaign page, that's the promise and the unspoken contract that all of this will be in, right? And of course, a lot of the times, the games, when they go to Kickstarter, they aren't fully complete yet. So a publisher doesn't even really have a great idea whether the things that they promised will actually work in tandem with what they're trying to achieve. So I think there's a bit of that. That the Kickstarter as a platform itself is great for gathering money, but it further restricts design into like these specific niches and tropes that are already established.
I know you're a fan of Frosthaven, and one thing I remember from backing that game myself on Kickstarter was, it's one of the few games I've actually backed on Kickstarter, but I remember that since, I can't remember exactly the timeline, but I believe that Frosthaven was kickstarted and then Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion came out, and then they had this innovation of doing the scenario books where the maps were laid out on those. And I remember that being a point in one of the Kickstarter updates where he said, yes, I've been asked if we're going to do scenario books in Frosthaven, but ultimately decided no, because A, that's what I said would be in the game, is the tiles, and B, it's part of like a user created scenario thing that people do as part of the game, and I don't want to sort of like leave those people out. So I thought it's true what you said. Like, that's the only instance I've had of a Kickstarter saying, we've promised this, so we're sticking with it. But at least it felt like a good justification for it, rather than just... And obviously, I know that Isaac, owner of Cephalofair Games, he hasn't run a bad Kickstarter yet, in my opinion. So I'm leaving him out of the very cynical view that I said earlier on.
I think he's flip-flopped on that actually a couple of times. And then there was word that they are in fact going to do it, but it's going to come much later because of how much time it takes, because so many people went, we really want this. So I think it might be something that's available in the future, but who knows now, because now they're doing second edition of Gloomhaven. It's.
But I think there's a difference between listening to people and including things that a lot of people have said, this is something we would like, and doing absolutely everything that everyone said, you should add this, you should add this, you should add this. And then it becomes a bit of a mess. But it's good to listen to people.
Yeah.
It is, but then you don't want to be pulled in literally 100,000 different directions.
Right.
End up with just Homer's car from The Simpsons.
I quite like that.
Such a good
When I was a kid, like when I saw that episode, I thought that's a really cool car. I don't know why all these people are booing in the audience. Like it had a bubble
this
for the
episode-
window. Like what?
You're like, this episode's so full of jokes, but I don't get why they'd put a really serious, cool car. Why is everyone laughing
Just
at
the
that in the
coolest
middle
car
of
I've
it?
ever seen. Why does everyone hate this?
Yeah, imagine having a bubble instead of a roof. So like you're driving around and you just could. I thought that'd be amazing.
somewhat impractical.
Why?
You must admit.
Why?
Why?
Like a submarine or something. I
All
don't
right.
know.
Okay.
Yeah, now I'm like, wait, why is it impractical? I don't know. I just don't know enough about cars, but seems like a really cool
mechanically
idea.
it might be impractical. I don't know about anything else.
It's ridiculous.
Is it okay? It's ridiculous.
I just
Whatever.
understood it was ridiculous because that was the. I mean,
That was the joke.
it was a
yeah,
joke in the
right?
show. I was like, this has got to be ridiculous, but I didn't know anything about cars. Cars back
Maybe
then
we
were
just
something-
accepted it all at face value, right?
Maybe we
and
did.
now we're rethinking it years down the line.
Just like board games.
Mm,
You know, that'll be the next Tesla design. Will be based on that.
no,
Ooh.
I don't want it.
Anyway, back to board games. Okay, so you just don't no games with player eliminations and games that. What was the other one? I forgot. We just talked
Like
about that.
our overall.
Take
that's-
that.
Take that. Yes.
Take that
Okay.
and the overall.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
I think I've.
Should we?
Leaning
So the current scenario is we have a bear who is just chilling on the floor, having a bit of a cheeky nap, for as long as the duration of a game that we take to play in a tree. The tree is during summer, so there's a little bit of heat maybe, but the UK, so anything probably goes. But there probably are some leaves there. Assume there's leaves. We have as many people as we want in this tree.
Yep.
It's a big
But-
tree, yeah.
and it doesn't matter how long this board game takes because the bear is happy to nap for as long as they wish. And there's other than the physical restrictions, there's no other actual restrictions on the board game itself. Is there anything that I particularly missed on that?
Peace must not fall down.
Well, yes.
Yes,
Peace
the
falls
crucial
down, you
element.
die. So whoever it was that dropped it dies. Does the game continue in this case, and then the bear just goes like, "Oh, I ate the person, and now I'm still hungry, but I'll just go back to my nap."
I mean, that might be something you'd have to find out yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's in the next episode.
Yes. Of bear shenanigans.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that we've got that. Is there any rough? Do we have ideas for games? Are we getting to that point? Have you got any other questions you want to ask? More very important questions about the bear that potentially gives you that cusp on the. Oh yeah, that recommendation really needed it. Like, what's their personality? Are they a friendly bear? But they're so hungry. They're hangry, or is it?
Are you going to try and make the bear play the game with you? Is it?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay. All right.
The bear is not friendly. The bear wants to eat you.
Oh.
The bear.
We know this about him.
Yeah. The bear is. He might have a bit of a cheeky streak, but he's not gonna. He's. food.
He doesn't play with his food, literally.
Well done. Well done.
Nice. I like it. That's perfect. Why didn't I think of that?
Okay, I have a game that jumped to mind immediately, and I haven't been able to think of anything else because I've just been like,
This is the same. I've been circling around this one game because I kind of went one facet of the game, like requirement, and I just can't think of anything else that meets it. So I'm just trying to like rack my brains and find any other game that at least gives me an option so I can say I picked the best of the ones that I thought of rather than just the one game that I thought of. I've eliminated loads based on this very awesome scenario, but I just can't find a suitable enough one. There's always something wrong with it. But yeah, I can definitely use the one.
I'm absolutely struggling. Literally every game I ever play has like got quite a lot of pieces.
You can always go with your Spirit Island again.
There's so many pieces.
Ben has picked Spirit Island on more than one occasion.
Only twice.
Yeah, that's more than one. I wasn't lying.
Best games.
It's also one of his favorite games.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a good game. I'm not gonna, you know.
I just find it just causes me to think too much. I just kind of let myself take a back seat in that when I'm playing that game. I'm just going to be like, someone else make the plan for me. I just want to pick the card and then somebody else can deal with the decisions from that point on. It's too much. And I like heavy games, which is so dumb. Like, I love these big chunky games, but this one for some reason just doesn't fit well with the way my brain works.
I think that makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy. I might just have a little browse on my social media just to see if there's any other game that kind of stands out. But I think I'm just going to end up sticking with the one that I picked.
All right, so let's get to some recommendations. Who would like to go first?
I feel like I always take the first. I'm going to take a step back this time. I feel like I want to go last.
All right, Ben, would you like to go?
I'll go for it. Yeah. So I'm going to pitch Snake Oil as a board game, which you may or may not have heard of. There's a lot of games like it. There's Fun Employed, to name another, and many others besides. But essentially, you're going to get a small hand of cards. I think it's 4. And you're going to take it in turns to combine 2 of those cards and pitch them as a product that you're going to try and sell to one of the players. And every other player in the game will also pitch their own products by combining 2 of their cards. And it's more of like an improv sort of sales pitch game than it is like a sort of a strategy or a puzzle game. And after everyone's given their pitch about who's created the best product or item, that person decides which one fits the bill best, and that person gets a point. And then we move around. The next person will pick, and all the other players will have to pitch their ideas. So there is in these kind of games also usually like a scenario, a card that prompts the scenario that everyone has to pitch for. So in Fun Employed, there'll be a job, a wacky job opening, and then people have to combine the bizarre skills they've got on their cards to explain why they're the best person for the job. I think this would be a great game because A, it's a lot of fun and everyone enjoys it. It's very easy to explain and to learn and to play. But also each player will only have to hold 4 cards, which I feel like most people can hold on to 4 cards without dropping them. Hopefully.
How are you going to track points?
You hand the scenario card that everyone's pitching their ideas for is also the point. So when you win the point, you take the card from the player and you can just stick that in your pocket.
Very good. Very good.
So I think it's simple, it's effective. You can play it for as long as you need to. It'll easily last over 10 minutes. You can do first to 3 points or whatever you like. And, people can write their own little prompts and say, what makes you the best person to escape from a hungry bear, for example?
Yeah.
Right, with what though, Ben? With what?
You don't write anything. Oh, I see. Right, yeah. If you're going to write your own scenario, you could just make it up. You could just say it. There's no hidden mechanic there. You could just come up with your own scenario and say, explain to me why you're the best person to save us from a bear today. And then everyone give it their go, and then that person gets to fight the bear and prove that they're the best.
The only reason I mentioned that is because in my own thinking of a game, I was thinking any games with like pens with caps or any even like pencils which have the the ability to fall down. I was like trying to stay away from those.
Smart. Yeah, I mean, do pencil shavings count as a piece
Oh yeah, what is the lightest thing that would
You'll
not
have to
wake the bear?
pre-sharpen these.
Pre-sharpen them.
I think we can discard broken pencils as a danger. That's pretty
Yeah,
safe.
what about the nib? Would the nib, if it snapped off, would that wake the bear up?
Yes.
No, I think if it's a normal thing like a pencil part.
Well, no,
it wouldn't
if the
count.
pencil is okay. So here's the thing:
Yeah.
are the pencils included in the game?
Oh, then it's a component.
Then it's a component.
Right, but they're also made of wood, which is like a tree branch. And a tree branch falling down wouldn't wake the bear.
Just Imagine
But
if
the
the whole
rubber isn't.
branch fell down.
Does it have a rubber
That
on
wouldn't
it
wake
too?
the bear.
Yeah, that
'cause-
was the whole idea. What if the rubber breaks off? If you're trying to raise it, right? Breaks off, falls down. No, I say component falling down wakes the bear up.
If
right?
it's included in the game.
Yes.
Okay.
Fair. That is
Even if
fair.
it looks akin to a leaf or some form of tree,
Or a feather.
doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I like a
Instant
quill.
nose.
Mm.
So yeah, that's my pitch. I don't know if you have any questions.
How long has it been since you've played Snake Oil? Because that game is ancient.
A long time, at least sort of 8-9 years, I think.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was a blast from the past. I was like, oh yeah, that exists.
There's a lot that do, as you said, re-implement that sort of idea. But
Yeah,
not
it's a
one
pretty
that's still
standard
played.
mechanic for lots of games. I think there's a unicorn battle game. I forget what that one's called. That's a very similar mechanic. Yeah, God, it's from 2010, which in board gaming terms is a lifetime ago.
It's like a secondary school student.
Oh no.
It's a teen. Oh no, it's the worst. Okay.
Right.
Sorry.
Do you want to go for it, Rich?
I have come up with a game which is done by one of our favorite publishers, which is Button Shy Games, and it is
smart.
called Numbsters. So I was introduced to this at the UK Games Expo, actually, and Numbsters is a primarily solo game. Well, no, it's a solo game. So my theory was I'm not going to put anybody else into harm's way. I'm not
That's
going to
kind.
risk other people dying. I'm not doing Sherlock and Moriarty. I'm just like, no, if one person has to deal with this situation, it's going to be me. I got myself into this situation, so I'm getting myself out of it as well. So Numbsters has 18 cards on. It is a solo game, and the idea is that I think it's inspired by the old adage 7, 8, 9, as in 7, literally 8, 9. And the idea is that you have these 18 cards and they have numbers on, and some of them have special powers. And it's a game where you're with a small stack of cards and you pull a card out, and then you get to manipulate the hand slightly. So you get to change positions of a couple of cards, and then one eats the other. And you've got one card, which is a mouth, and that's what helps eat. And the idea is that if the mouth ends up ascending to the top, you lose the game. So you have to be very careful about the way in which you manipulate the deck. And you're not going to win it all the time. So it's quite a good solo game. The way it had originally been pitched to me was that you could play it in a queue. You could have one pocket is going to be your like discard, one is your deck, and then you've got the kind of cards that you're playing with. And I'm like, well, that's basically perfect for sitting in a tree and just managing your own hands. There are components, but they're very few. But it's still a good game, and it's supposed to take exactly 10 minutes. So overall, it hits quite a few of those boxes.
Wow.
Nice.
And the artwork is quite interesting as well. It's quite an interesting card.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
I own most of the Button Shy catalog. How did you manage to pick one of the very few games of theirs that I've never even played?
It did only come out this year.
Okay.
So unlike Ben's ancient board game, this is actually a very, very recent. And it's also fairly well rated as well. So other people think this is a good game too. Whether or not you take into account those ratings.
I was going to say, like, I enjoyed the pitch, and I just loved the fact that you left the end bit. The artwork is quite interesting. Good bit. Yeah.
It reminds me of, there used to be like a comic, not a comic, like a cartoon that was about monsters I swear they're in like a junkyard or something, or like and it just reminds me of that kind of style of
Was it like the guy with the really big mouth? Like
Yeah,
there's
possibly
like
that.
a pink clay thing. Yeah, I think I know the cartoon you're on about. And immediately when you said a mouth, that is the exact mouth that I was thinking of. How weird.
There you
Incredible.
go.
And I've never
I
seen
like
that
that
game.
there's eating in this game, right? That's very good, I think.
And if you fail, then you get in. So yeah, it's also
Yeah,
that thematic is running through.
Yeah, incredible, actually.
Good pick.
Do you have any questions, or do you want Russ to pitch, and then you can answer any questions that come up?
Yeah, I think I want to hear Russ's
Yeah,
now.
me too.
Yeah.
All right, so I've been circling around this idea in my head ever since you set the scenario about, pieces falling bad. So that's the main thing, right? So I was trying to think of games that you can play almost entirely inside the box, but even still, there's some really clever entries in that category that utilize the box, but they all involve pieces. There's a game, I don't even know the name of it, but it's a really clever one where you drop a ball into the box, and then the way that the pieces flip over is part of the gameplay. And that's so clever, but completely useless for this scenario. So I was thinking, what games do you play almost entirely inside the box? And one game that came to me quite late was a game called Wavelength, which I'm sure you've heard of. And again, one of the very few other games that I've backed on Kickstarter. So I feel like it's a theme for this episode, so I'm going with it. Wavelength, if you don't know the game, is about subjective measurements on a scale. So every game, you give this kind of weird dial mechanism to a player, and they're going to spin it so that there's like kind of a zone on this dial which is meant to sit on a random part of this scale. The player whose turn it is going to see that scale and then close up that dial so only they know where it sits. And then they get a card which might range from, for example, like hot to cold or fashionable to unfashionable. And they need to give a clue to the rest of their team so that when presented with this clue, they guess that it sits at the right place on the scale. And the closer you get to this right place, the more points you score. It's a really cool concept, and I knew that it's one of those few games that when I heard the pitch of it, you have a scale and you have to give a clue to get them to guess the right point on that scale. So it's all subjective. I thought it was really clever. Not only that, but this game is very nicely produced as well. The whole game can be played inside of the box because everything sits nicely inside the scale, which can be removed. It has a really nice slot that it sits into quite sturdily, and the points are tracked using these sort of like divots inside the box as well, so you just need to move them up on the divots to track your points. The cards have a nice slot inside as well. Even the rulebook has a space to place it, so all you need to do is open the box lid, put the box lid underneath, and then just sit the scale up, and you've got pretty much the game ready to go. So that's another selling point to it. There's no danger of rolling or falling pieces, but it's also just a really solid game that does create quite a lot of discussion and reaction. So I mean, it's a solid game that I can't believe we haven't recommended on this podcast before, but it's Wavelength.
How many people are you dragging to their death?
I was going to ask that.
Yeah.
Technically, only one person's going to die in this, but irrelevant. If the risk of somebody dying is low because you have picked the appropriate game, then you can technically play this with, legally, I guess, 4 people minimum because you're playing it in teams. But I have a variant that I either discovered or came up with that you can play it with 3 people. And even I've seen people playing it in 2 in the Hour Cafe because they just like the idea of trying to guess the other player's concept. Like scale, it's the same reason that sometimes you'll see people playing Cards Against Humanity as a 2-player because they just want a bit of silliness and they don't really care about the rules of the game. They just want to, or What You Meme, I should have said, as a more appropriate like alternative in that you be the judge kind of category. But yeah, it's just about coming up with discussions and funny stuff, basically.
I have a question about
Yes.
Wavelength. How would you ensure that the self-contained game in the box remained in the tree?
Oh, you would literally just hold the box. You can play
I
it by
see.
holding the box because you literally don't need to have the box resting down at any part of the game.
You would just stand there, like, holding.
Yeah, just literally holding onto the box.
I see.
And then when it's the other player's turn, you hand them the box for
I
them
see.
to like.
No, see, that's the part. I'm sorry, I've been stuck on this in my brain since ever you mentioned wavelength and said, oh, it all fits in the box. But what you forget is that you have to pass the box. And as we've established, I don't want to rules lawyer you, but it's hot, sweaty summer. You know, hands are slippy, nerves are shot, right? You have to pass the box. There's an element of danger there.
Well, I would argue that if you were to have a game resting on a branch where you have people moving, it's actually less risky to have two hands holding onto the box the whole time rather than leaving it resting on the branch itself where the movement of the people on the branch might affect it. So that's where I was kind of going for. I was actually thinking if you had the whole box itself, I'm going to trust me holding onto a box if my life is on the line rather than just having it sitting it between me and very other nervous people on this sort of shaking branch.
I really hear that board gamers work very well in high tension death environments.
I think that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
They've all got hands of steel. I've never seen anyone like drops a component from a board game on the floor.
Yeah,
No.
let alone a whole box.
Technically, Russ only needs to trust himself, right? Like, doesn't really matter if someone else flubs it and, falls out.
I'm
on
not
them, I guess.
sure I would want bits of tree in my board game box, though.
Is that what you're worrying about?
Yes. Yeah. Because
Okay.
you get it. Because if someone is holding the box the entire time, how long does that game take? I can't remember. But however long it takes, you're going to be holding that. Bugs are falling in, bits of branch, leaves are falling in, sweat's going in there, your hands are sticky.
To be fair, you'd be alive. And also, that's the risk of all of these games, right? If you've got a box just sitting there or a board, you're going to have that situation. At least then they'll be self-contained and you can put it in and then run away from the bear and empty them out sometime in the future.
Yeah, see, I think I'm leaning towards an answer, and I think sadly it's obvious, but it's got to be the Button Shy game because it doesn't even come in a box. It comes in a wallet.
It doesn't come in a box.
Yeah.
But the only problem with the Button Shy games is even in our temperate climate, the wallet sticks together quite often. And
Sure,
sometimes
but you don't need the wallet. You just put it back in your pocket, right?
wait.
Yeah.
And sometimes I have opened a Button Shy game and it has the stickiness of the plastic has started like pulling out one of the cards.
Oh.
I mean, okay, yeah.
So,
I've never noticed that, but I believe you.
Not fully, obviously. It doesn't fly out. But
Yeah. Well, that's the important part, that it doesn't fly out, right?
True.
I'm on Elaine's side.
How are you feeling? What are you feeling?
What am I feeling?
Are you in Russ's wavelength? Are you
goodness me.
buying the snake oil?
Go on, do a third one. For the Button Shy.
Are you counting the numbsters? I don't know. Sorry, that ran out.
Right, yeah, it did, didn't it? I don't know. I'm put off with this wavelength thing that you would have an open box in a tree.
Okay.
Only heathens would do that.
Yeah, and the fact, like you said, that your hands are going to be slippery and passing a box, and your arms are going to ache. You're going to think that they're not because you pick it up and you go, well, that's pretty light. There's nothing to it.
Yeah.
And after 20 minutes, you'll be falling on the ground,
Do you know, when I was 14,
also the
I once had to hold a flagpole just with my hands in a church for like the entire ceremony, right? It was a nightmare. I hated it.
Yeah.
I'll never forget it. It was so horrible.
I once carried a full dinner set home from a shop, right? Because I picked it up and I thought, that's not that heavy. And then after 10 minutes of walking home with it, my arms were going to fall off. So I think that might be that kind of situation. And I think it would be risky. So
I can just imagine that if you're trying to hand it two hands each time, people are going to be like, balance is an issue in those trees, right?
Right. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, if you fall out of the tree yourself while you're trying to take the box, that's
I mean, I'm not a
disqualification
component
too.
of the game.
This is true. This is true. Okay, well, maybe it's not then. Maybe that's
Loophole.
fine. Yeah,
Can I just run?
Well, no, the stipulation is that you must finish the game to completion
Oh, that's
Ooh.
true.
in the tree.
in the tree. Yeah.
Okay. You're thinking button shy, right?
Yeah, I'm leaning towards it.
Yeah, I think if you had like a shirt where you had some top pockets or something, like if you were trying to do it in your jeans or whatever, and you were like fiddling about and leaning over trying to pull out cards,
Yeah.
right?
Having a really
might
great time
also-
up there, guys.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
might topple off.
I mean, I'm sort of like, okay, I think snake oil is a close second, but it does involve other people, you know, and
Yes.
that is again, you know, like from a moral perspective, right? Numbsters.
But from a morale perspective, to be with people in a tree trying to get away from a bear might not be a bad thing. You would have something to talk about, probably forever.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
Remember the time we played a board game and tried not to wake the bear up
Yes.
because it would eat us? Yeah.
We tried
Those were
not
the
to drop a
days.
component on its head because it would eat us. Yeah. Yeah. You'd be the life of the old people's home telling that story.
Remember that time Russ dropped wavelength and got eaten by a bear?
Yes.
Hey,
That
I
might be
wouldn't drop
that
it.
story.
We've already established that.
Yeah, okay, let's go with I like snake oil. I like the sound of it though.
Have you ever played it?
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
Yes, I played it with
No,
you.
I mean I remember playing it. I just didn't remember if it was with you or
Yes.
not. Okay.
But I have not played this button shy game because we don't have it. So I don't know what it's like.
But I like button shy games. I'm immediately intrigued.
as I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Numbsters.
It's Numbsters, yeah.
Whee!
Nice. Well done, Rich.
Yay! Amazing. Well, I think obviously you picked the correct game. Well done to all the other options as well, apart from Russ's, which definitely wouldn't have worked.
I'm so, you know what? I can't speak.
Well, if you think
Sorry,
that you
Russ.
can play Wavelength in a tree without dropping any of the peak components or a box, please let us know in the comments below anyway. Thank you so much for joining us for this. Where can people find you guys?
They can find us in two places. They can find us on youtube.com. It's a website. Some people know about it. If you type in
niche.
no pun included, then one of the results will be us, I think, likely, into the search bar. And
There's a cartoon of our faces
Yes.
as our logo, so you should be able to.
Yeah, and our dog as well.
And our dog.
Do you want to tell them about the podcast?
We also have a podcast, which you can find in all your normal podcast places, which is called Talk Cardboard.
I really liked the artwork that you had done I think it was for the podcast. It just looks absolutely amazing.
That is by Nick Nazaro. He is very talented. He did such a great job. We basically said to him, we want this. And then it took him like a week and he came back with exactly how we imagined it would look like. And that was brilliant.
And way better than we'd explained it.
Yeah.
It does look great.
Yeah, he did such a great job.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And Ben, where can people find us?
Well, we are also wherever you find your podcasts. We're also on YouTube, so please leave a like or a 5-star review and share with your friends. We will see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.